Morning, everyone. My name is Jen Glasgow. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the vice chair of the COTBC board. And I'm pleased to welcome you today and call the 22nd annual general meeting to order. This morning, we're going to follow Robert's Rules of Order, and motions are required for the adoption of the agenda and receiving the audited financial statements. Do I change the slides? I do. Great. All right, we're piloting live streaming, as already mentioned, for today's events. We're recording this session and the AGM will be uploaded to the college website. There are tips on the slide for those connecting here and in person and virtually to help things go smoothly. Here's our agenda for this morning. May I have a motion for approval of the agenda as circulated? Noted and seconded. Morning. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. A quick note that over the last 2 years, our AGM has been exclusively virtually, and it's been an hour, which has allowed more times for registrants to submit questions in person. And then we were able to answer those questions. Today, it's half an hour. Kathy and I are going to try and talk as succinctly as possible. We hope to have time for 1 or 2 questions today. And if we don't have time, certainly questions are always welcome at the college and the staff will work to get back to you around that. All right, we have quorum, and I'm pleased to report that there was 70 individuals registered to come in person and 40 individuals registered to be online. I'd like to start by noting that Mary O'Callaghan, appointed public member and current chair of the board, sends her regrets as she was unable to attend today. I'm pleased to introduce my other 2 board colleagues who are here today, and I ask them to stand. Tyson LeBlanc and did Philip go get a coffee? Oh, no, there he is. Philip Santiago, elected registered members of the board. In addition to Mary sending her regrets, we also have regrets from our other 2 public board members, Ian Wank and Gail Nye, our elected board members, Jeff Boniface and Debbie Ruggiero, and our appointed board member, Joy Parsons. A little later in the report, you'll see a picture of all the board members, as well as a listing of all of our committee members. I'm pleased to note that there's 3 college staff attending today: Darlene Hay, Administrative Associate, Amanda Crook, Administrative Associate, and Heather Burrett is here, the manager of our Quality Assurance Program. We also have 2 new staff members that I'm very happy to introduce. Karen Plischke is the new Interim Director of Transition and incoming Registrar and CEO, and Megan Shields is our new Deputy Registrar. Okay, so it is my pleasure to provide the report from the board today, including highlights from our annual report, which is available on the website, and also there's copies on your table today. One of the pillars of the board's strategic plan, the college's strategic plan, is demonstrating the commitment of the college to cultural safety and humility. On July 27th, 2021, COTBC, along with registrars from 10 other health regulatory colleges in BC, gathered with a First Nations consultant, First Nations knowledge keeper, and witnesses for a special ceremony to issue an apology. During the ceremony held at Spanish Banks here in Vancouver, the registrars read an apology and signed an apology and commitment to action. COTBC vowed to become anti-racist and support the profession we regulate to do the same, acknowledging that Indigenous people have experienced and suffered from racism while engaging with OTs in BC. These commitments to action continue to guide our work, both individually as a college and in collaboration with our partner colleges. We recognize that the commitment to Indigenous cultural safety and humility is an ongoing journey that requires thoughtful and meaningful engagement with Indigenous peoples and communities. And over the past year, the college has focused on building some of these relationships. COTBC is honored and grateful to have Taytatun, Earl Claxton Jr., a respected Sayout Nation elder and ethnobotanist, to engage with the college. He's been sharing his history, his words of wisdom and messages with board and staff, guiding us on our learning and advising us as we move forward. The college also commissioned Sage Paul, a local Coast Salish artist, to create 5 pieces of art, important to help make our spaces, both virtual and physical, more culturally welcoming and safe. In creating the art pieces, Sage spent time learning about the college and about OT, and each of her 5 pieces have her own personal reflection and meaning. One of the designs is the one on the front of the annual general report and our opening slide, which she named Land Acknowledgement. I'd like just to take a moment to read aloud Sage's reflection on this particular piece and how she feels it is about OTs. She called it the ambassador. This print is meant to represent the body of occupational therapists. They are a community, a family, much like rabbits. These two moss-colored hairs blend peacefully into their olive green background as in nature. I see their qualities of compassion and understanding being much like therapists. I bet they have to be quick and smart too. Both are family or humanity-oriented, playful, independent, and strong, despite obstacles that might be in their way. One rabbit positioned upside down symbolizes the creative and innovative ways occupational therapists address their client goals. Another recent milestone stemming from the apology and commitment to action happened recently on September 30th. COTBC gathered along with 10 other health professional colleges with an Indigenous leader, knowledge carrier, and witnesses to recognize the launch of the Indigenous Cultural Safety, Humility, and Anti-Racism Practice Standard. This standard sets clear expectations for how registrants are to provide culturally safe and anti-racist care for Indigenous clients and patients, a commitment to Indigenous peoples. COTBC would like to thank the BC College of Nurses and Midwives and College of Physicians and Surgeons of BC, who released their standards earlier this year, for sharing this work with all BC health regulators so that all regulated health professionals can be held to the same standard for achieving Indigenous cultural safety through cultural humility and providing anti-racist care for Indigenous clients. COTBC is going to be working with the other colleges in developing supports for registrants and learning about and applying this standard in their practice. Sage's artwork, the standard, they're all on the website. We encourage you to have a look and also look out for opportunities to get engaged and learn more about it. Moving on to another important collaboration milestone from the last year, the new competencies for OTs in Canada was released. This document establishes one set of occupational therapy competencies for the teaching and evaluation of OTs and is the culmination of a joint project from the Association of Canadian Occupational Therapy Regulatory Associations, Association of Canadian OT University Programs, and the Canadian Association of Occupational Therapists. College staff and many COTBC registrants provided valuable input, so thank you if you participated in a focus group or a survey. For the college, this document impacts all of our core programs: registration, standards of practice, quality assurance, and complaints. The board's directed that the competencies will come into effect May 1st, 2023, and the project is just underway to support registrants to learn about them and apply them in their practice. COTBC is also excited to be leading a cross-Canada collaborative project with partner OT regulators in Canada to develop a common approach for confirming competency to re-enter practice. All OT regulatory organizations are confronted with determining what a former registrant who's been away from practice must do to confirm that they're safe to return. This is called Project Comeback. It's anticipated to conclude in the fall and will result in a revised re-entry program for our college. So in November 2019, the Minister of Health's All-Party Steering Committee started consultations on the proposals to modernize the regulations of health professions in BC. Final recommendations were released August 2020, and these provided a dramatic picture for changes for many of the colleges regulating over 21 professions in BC. These recommendations were recently reintroduced just last month as Bill 36. It's called the Health Professions and Occupations Act and is being debated currently in the legislature, which means that these changes that we heard about in 2020 and 2019 are now more firmly on the horizon. One of the key recommendations relates to amalgamation. And as you will have already seen on the slide, there is proposed restructuring into 6 colleges, of which the college would be part of a multi-profession college. We are working with these other professions, college partners, to explore what we can do to prepare for the changes to come, although much is uncertain. These colleges have a strong foundation, and COTBC in particular has a strong foundation of working collaboratively and together, which is positioning us hopefully well for all the change and collaboration to come. Notwithstanding this uncertainty, this context brings the college. We are continuing to work with an unrelenting focus on protecting the public, and we're ready for what the future brings. We're committed to providing registrants with ongoing updates on the evolving health professions regulatory system. And, you know, the website, emails from the college continue to be probably the best place to find out more information and about engagement mechanisms. Okay. I'm proud to be a member of the board, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the board members who contribute their time, skills, and energy to the important work of the college to protect the public. There are board and committee members present today, and I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to each of them for their valuable work. I encourage you to think about taking on an active role in college activities. It's an amazing experience. I don't know that I've ever been up at the lectern at an AGM, but if my face seems familiar, it's because I volunteered with the college since 2004. Which is a really long time. I've been on the board and the nominations panel and the continuing competence committee, which then became the quality assurance program committee. And then I got back on the board and the competence panel. So all that to say, my COTBC volunteering has been one of the most impactful and important experiences in my career so far. Not only have I helped shape public protection in BC, I've made incredible relationships, friendships, and I've strengthened my connection to my profession. And I'm very passionate about OT. One of the most meaningful parts of my college volunteering has been my relationship with Kathy. And I just want to take a moment. It's not formally in the agenda to acknowledge Kathy's change. I'll just make it about me. It's okay. Kathy and I are very different, and we've worked really well together. I have learned the importance of integrity, partnerships, and values-based learning, values-based leadership. I'm really excited for you, Kathy, for the next steps. It's a huge loss for the college, and I'm really going to miss you. I would also like to formally acknowledge with appreciation all of the committee members for their valuable contribution to the committee work at the college over the past year. And to the registrants who respond to our periodic calls to be in a focus group or respond to a survey, just really want to say thank you. And I'm now going to hand it over to Kathy to talk about the audited financial statements.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kathy Corbett. My pronouns are she, her. Now I have to gather my thoughts because Jen knows me well enough that it's never about me. So it's a difficult day for that reason. So it's the big green button, right, Amanda? Thanks. So all the financial statements are in the annual report, and what we try to do is do a little bit of highlight here, but if you have any particular questions, don't hesitate to contact me. I'm happy to go through them, but I'll do a few highlights as we often do. Certainly revenue for all health profession colleges is based on one thing that you're all pretty well aware of, which is registrant fees. And so you can see that registration fees this year look higher, but in fact, what you might remember, for those of you that were registered for 2020, 2021, the pandemic had just hit in March. Our renewal was shortly after that, and we provided a $100 deduction. So people had so the fee discrepancy isn't that we've got more people necessarily, although we have a few more. It's really about representing that the fees for that year were reduced per registrant by $100. So that's why that difference is there. We do have a few more registrants each year, so we seem to be growing, and that is reflected in the annual report if you look at the statistics that we've reflected in terms of our registrant base. Generally, our expenses remain pretty stable and they fluctuate very little. I think the differences you'll see here were really the return to some operations. We deferred, obvious things like in-person meetings and some of the activities that required a different context for working. So really the representation here looks a little bit skewed because of the things that we didn't do. It's probably more pronounced in the area of projects and consulting, where the project work, we deferred quite a bit of work and then reinstituted those projects this year. So they're fairly stable over time. We do kind of what I would call a just-in-time consulting approach. And certainly some of the time for consultants was reallocated into staffing because we actually had a permanent quality assurance committee manager position. This chart is always a little bit hard to do because we kind of base it on current allocations, but it gives you a bit of a picture where some of the funds go to. It's not exact in a small organization where we've got a small staff and the programs are kind of distributed across people. So it's kind of hard to be discrete, but this is a pretty reasonable representation of where those things, where the fees actually go in terms of supporting the programs. And lastly, sometimes people want to know a bit more about some aspects of the complaint, and you probably noticed in the financials we had some significant changes in legal fees, and you would have seen that on the expense run. Some of those legal fees on the overall expenses were a result of the implementation of the public health order and advice associated with vaccination mandates and the other related public health orders that came down for all colleges legally required to follow. So there were some increased costs, but certainly in terms of the inquiry, this is probably represented here because we had in last year, it was 7 complaints and this year we had 17. So there's always fluctuation around our legal fees related to the nature of the year and the kind of work we're doing. That gives you a little bit of a picture of where it's at. And lastly, the statement of financial position sometimes is because it's very audit oriented and accounting oriented in the report, but I kind of look at it in a really practical way. How much do we have? How much is in reserves? And where does it come from? So you'll always see at the end of an auditing year something called deferred revenue. That's really the operating revenue. You pay your fees before our new year starts. So we have money that we put in the operating account, if you will. I think of bags of money, and that one goes in for what's going to happen on July 1st. So obviously your fees have to come in before the end of June, and that's called deferred revenue, and that goes to the operating expenses for the following year. Then we have, I think we're in a pretty solid financial position. Actually, we've got some good reserves. There's 2 kinds of reserves. One is sort of contingency funds or operating money that aren't restricted to keep us flowing if we had some contingencies come up. So you typically want to have at least 6 to 8 months of operating expenses should something happen or changes happen on the horizon, which I guess are coming someday. And lastly, the restricted accounts are really accounts that the board has to authorize any expenditures from. So they are in a position that when we want to do particular projects or activities, or there's some requirements related to our budgeting, the board has to authorize those expenses, and those are called restricted accounts. Payable is just stuff we still owe, and the other is there. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a picture of where our financials are. And lastly, we always look forward to what's called a clean audit or an unqualified audit. And we've had those for 20 plus years. So I'm really proud of that. But essentially it's the testing that happens when an external accounting firm comes in and takes a look at how we're doing how we're attending to our policies, and that our accounting standards are up to what's required in terms of the auditing process. So it's always nice to have that letter of a clean audit. So that's my comments today about the financials, and as I'm really happy to answer any questions that come up. It's a fairly straightforward, but to recognize you may have other questions you have. I'm happy to answer them. Back to Jen.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. That was both informative and helped, I think, with clarity as well. May I have a motion that the audited financial statement as circulated in the 2021-2022 annual report be received? And seconded, see in the back. All those in favor? And opposed? Motion carried. All right, I actually think we're doing pretty good for time. Any questions? They're like, get on to the food and the tea and then bring on the next speaker. No problem. Oh, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me? Thank you. Yeah, so no, that was very lovely. I guess I would, maybe this isn't the right venue, but maybe it is. I just like to wonder if there's a little bit more about the merging of the colleges and what's happening in that regard. I'd just love to, at least if you don't know the details, if you have your crystal ball for that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I would start with us too. There's, with the legislation being in front of the government right now, there's a lot of uncertainty. So there's more we don't know than what we know. Anything you want to add, Kathy?
Yeah. Don't know how to turn this.
We can switch.
We have known since about 2018 or 19, when the investigation occurred on the College of Dental Surgeons of British Columbia, that was struggling, and the minister had concerns about their ability to self-regulate. And so that resulted in some reports and some considerations about what excellence in governance looks like, and certainly what health profession regulation should look like. So it's not new information. I think it's just more on the horizon. And through those consulting reports are all, I think, linked on our website, or certainly I can provide those, because it gives you a bit of a picture of amalgamation is really one of the key recommendations that came out when the minister asked the consultant Harry Caton from the UK to review the Health Professions Act, and that's what's before the legislature now. It's a huge change and transformation. So I would say it was going to address issues that are going to improve regulation in many ways, and some of the context of what programs we have, and the Health Professions Act was old. The amalgamation piece, though, that's getting attention is the one sort of major transformation, but there's still lots of changes to the legislation itself. We don't know a lot about, other than I think the government has been clear now, this is the configuration they're looking to, and any new colleges. So I know there's a college on the wings for diagnostics and therapeutics, the medical radiation, respiratory, and there might be one other group that would likely be part of the allied health and care professions group. And any other new college would likely be then rolled in. So there's quite a commitment from the minister that it's 6 colleges, period. I think what I'm positive about is I think there's some really good foundation of the 11 working together, and sort of we prepared a part of 7 and looking at what that transformation looks like. There have been some amalgamations that have happened. The oral health colleges, you might have seen, has become the 4 colleges rolled into the College of Oral Health Professionals. So we've got some learning, I suppose, then from colleges that have done some amalgamations. But I think the minister recognizes this is kind of a different animal, because it's a number of different professions versus a profession focused on a particular area like oral health. So I think there's lots of opportunity for consultation and discussion, and trying to do it right. And I think that I think it can achieve excellence in regulation. I think we want to make sure it preserves. I've been telling people this line, but I think one of the things that I'd like to see anchor any changes, and sort of how I hope I've committed to, and I've been part of this college, and from the beginning days to today, or till soon when I'll be gone. But regulation's really working when it supports professionalism and allows it to flourish. So if we can keep that at the heart of it, then I would hope that we could build those connections and not have a deconstructive approach to what regulation looks like, because the act is huge. So I would say stay tuned. If you're looking for resources, I've got lots that I can shoot your way to see where it's at, but we really don't have much of a picture other than it's now in the legislature, not the amalgamation per se, but the enabling legislation that would provide for that. And then all the other changes to inquiry and discipline, and the new legislation embeds Indigenous cultural safety and humility all the way through regulatory processes. So there's lots of change related to the regulation itself, as well as the amalgamation. So that was probably a longer answer than you wanted, but I think I would keep the questions coming, because we'll start, making sure we're communicating in a way when we know you'll know. It's what I've said to the staff, but I know you'll know. Like, it's just, it really is something we don't have a real clear picture on. We're continuing to do our work, and we're going to continue to regulate on the pillars that we have in the college until we're told otherwise. That's the Royal Week, is January 1st. No. Actually, I'm sadder about it, but it isn't about me, right? Yeah. Anyway. Great question. Thanks, Ben.
Great. We still have time for another question, if there's anything. Yeah, hi. Over here with the mic, please.
Hi, I'm wondering if you could speak to the process for identifying the new registrar.
Yeah.
Was there a process involved, or how did that come about?
That's a great question. When we found out that Kathy was leaving, the context around that was that Andrea had also announced that she was leaving, our deputy registrar. We didn't know if the legislation was coming in the fall session or not. So what the board first did was we gathered some principles around what's most important. And what we decided was that a short-term approach to kind of keep the wheels on the bus, so to speak, was the best way to go about it. That we didn't have time for a prolonged extensive recruitment strategy. We didn't have a deputy registrar that could support with that. And so the board made the decision to try and find someone to appoint. So the first was to identify the principals. The second was to make a decision as a board that appointment was where we were going to go versus a hiring strategy. And then it was, looking for someone to appoint. And when Karen came forward and said that she was interested, we considered that as a board, went through, a full board process around that. And that was the decision that was made. Yeah. Thanks. It was a really good question. It was a tricky time. Yeah, but I feel like, what we try and do as someone who's been on the board for a long time, we anchored our values, figured out our North Star, and then moved from there. And what we really felt that the organization needed right now was just stability. And I think with the legislation coming through in the fall, I think that affirms that we made the right decision. We don't know what the timeline is. Are we still going to be a college for 5 years or 2 years? And so, if it becomes apparent, what the board also decided, if it becomes apparent that we are going to exist as an entity for longer, then we would need to, have a look at that, right? But for the time being, with the existence of the college being as short as it appears it's going to be, we're really confident that we made the right decision. Great question. How are we doing for time, Kathy? 1 minute. Okay, 1 minute. I'm going to wrap up. Thank you very much. Before we close, we do have a few announcements. Watch for a call for expressions of interest for a registrant member on the Quality Assurance Committee. The term would start February 1st, 2023, with an opportunity for orientation with the QA committee in January. If you're interested, please complete a committee expression of interest form found on the college website and return to the college office. If you want more information, don't hesitate to contact us. You could talk to Heather here today. You could talk to me. I've been on this committee. Very exciting work happening. I really hope that you consider joining. There's also 2 public members' terms ending in January. I just want to acknowledge that both Ian Wank and Mary O'Callaghan, their terms, because they're appointed by the government, so they've indicated that their term is ending, and they have made incredible, valuable contributions to the board. I just want to acknowledge that. And I now adjourn the 22nd annual COTBC general meeting. Thank you.